Hello out there in World Wide Web land. I've got this DW Performance Series. It's an 18 by 14 bass drum orphan that I picked up off a marketplace, and it's a good sounding little drum when the beater hits on center. It's less so. I've got this all loose right now, but it's less so when it doesn't. So I purchased the DWCP9908CR bass drum lifter riser. Cost me $59.99, I believe, and I actually got free shipping. So I'm going to install it on this bass drum. Now, the box came empty, no instructions, but I sent an email to DW customer care, told them exactly what I was doing, the part number, and they were kind enough to, almost within like an hour and a half, email me the proprietary specs of where to put. I mean, it's not rocket science, but it goes here, but it actually, the mount itself, the mounting plate, gets centered between these lugs, and the center line here is the center of this. So we're going to lay this out. I'm going to take it apart, and then I'm also going to use a coping saw, hopefully, and notch out part of this hoop so it's out of the way for the pedal. But I'll going to walk my way through this, installing this. As always, I got some coffee and got a cigar burning, so you know, don't work too hard, work smart. That's what I always say. Okay, so I've loosened all the tension rods, and I'm just going to show you that even though I probably really don't need to do this, just for fun, before I unseat the head, I'm just going to make a pencil mark. Maybe I'm going to attempt to make a pencil mark. Yeah, this poly's lovely. Well, I'm kind of getting it. I can see that. Just so I know where that sits, so I make sure when I get this all mocked up that it's going to clear that. Obviously with tension, that's going to push a little more, but just making sure that we're going to be out of the way. I might use my Sharpie and polish that out of there. Maybe. I've got this little Sharpie. Nobody's going to see it down here anyway. Okay, there we got a silver mark. Perfect. Okay, I took these two lugs off here so I can easier measure things out here. Just took them off. I'm going to have to find something that marks on the shell here. I may end up trying to strip this lacquer off the shell and trying to refinish this drum to match. I own a pretty big collector's series kit. I kind of picked this up just as a fun little 18 to go with it, to play in a small area. So I'm not looking to play jazz or anything with this. It's just looking for a small kick drum, small footprint. I mic it up anyway, so get a little nice tight thump out of it. But I got to figure out what's going to mark on this poly. I don't know. Pencil didn't seem to want to at all, so I might get a fine tip Sharpie, and I know I can probably clean that off with a little dry erase marker or something. So the previous owner of this drum obviously installed the Velcro for the pillows. I do realize that that's going to be awfully close on the edges here where I'm drilling these holes. It's really stuck on there good, so I'm actually going to just try and leave it on there and get through the shell. Hopefully maybe go through the fabric as well. If not, I've got a punch. I can punch a hole through it. But the screws will actually help hold that on there, because sometimes you play these drums out in the hot sun and that adhesive gets a little gooey and your pillows sometimes. But this is stuck on there really good, so I don't know. We'll see when I get to that point. Okay, I didn't go into detail here about how I did this. Obviously, if you're not smart enough to figure out how to lay this out, you probably shouldn't be tackling it yourself. But I used a combination of cloth tape and my square to I found the center line, center between the lugs, made a line, found the center between these on the gasket, found the center up here, kind of made a line here, some lines here, lined it all up, taped it down, and you'll notice that it's probably a good solid little over almost a ½ inch away from where the hoop sits when it's seated, fully seated. So that should be a good spot. So that's where I'm going. That's what DW says. That's what goes. So I've just taped it down. I'm going to mark out where my holes will go. I bought a brand new 17/64. It said 7mm or 17/64 drill bit. They didn't have a brad point or anything, but brand new drill bit, 4 holes. I'm not too concerned about any blowout, and we might actually miss the Velcro inside. So okay, so I just marked out the location, the centers of the holes, and took the gasket off because the drill bit I was going to use is actually a little too large to go through the gasket. That's probably by design. So I got a bit that's about half the size of the final bit, and I'm just going to drill a starter hole, and then I'm going to make them bigger. So we'll go from there. Okay, I got my first pass through with a smaller bit. It went through really easy. These are pretty thin shell. These 2 holes here completely missed the Velcro. These 2 did go against, but just a tiny bit of tear out, but it's really not that big of a deal. The size of the washer is going to be on this, going to cover it all. So no worries. Whoops, sorry, that's horrible focus. There we go. So I'm gonna go with the full-size bit now. Holes are drilled. You can see the lacquer chipped a little bit when I used the big bit. Yeah, it's all good. Look inside. A little tiny bit of tear out there, but I'm not too concerned about that. I did just buy this as an orphan drum. It's like drums are meant to be played, they don't have to be perfect. And that'll be covered anyway, so not worried about it. I'm sure I could have used a backer block and all that stuff, whatever, step bit. Yeah, this is a real world guy just wanting to get this done. Your average Joe, here we go. Okay, everything looks like it lines up just fine. Gasket goes on first, and then the mount. I got a couple of them started, and then was able to feed the other 2 through. I haven't tightened it yet, but I'm just about to tighten it up, snug it up. Okay, I've got the plate mounted to the shell. It's on there good and solid. See, no harm, no foul, not taking that off. It'll still stick. And then the next thing to do is you can see here on the drawing, and I've noticed this obviously on the factory installed pictures that I've seen on the interwebs, is that they took a notch, they cut this notch out of the hoop so you can get your beater to hit square and your chain won't rub against. So what I've done here, there's no measurements for that, so that's going to be an eyeball job here. But what I've done is, I guess right here, previous owner kind of used this area of the hoop to attach the pedal to. I'm kind of I don't know, I'm just stupid like this, but that's the seam on the veneer, outer veneer of the hoop, so I kind of lined it up with there. At least I thought I had it lined up, yeah. And so with that puts these marks that I made on the hoop with my silver pin at the edge of the lug, which I'll measure between those and find a center, figure out how deep I'm going to go, and then I'll make some kind of arc, and I'm going to use my coping saw to kind of cut it out by hand. So we'll see how that project goes, and I will check back in with you. It was 5.5 inches between those 2 marks that I had made, so I found the center point and made a mark there at the edge of the hoop. Okay, these are 1 3/4 hoops, so I've measured, I got about 7/8 there. Sorry, I made 2 center lines there. The longer one is the accurate one. My square kind of moved on me a little bit. So I got that squared up, and that's kind of where I'm going to shoot for. That's as deep as I'm going to go. So then I just got to figure out how I'm going to get this arc made, and so it's probably just going to take I'm going to go get my compass out and probably mark this out on a piece of paper and maybe make like a template that I can trace around, something like that. Right, I was able to use my compass here to kind of, well, I actually clamped my T-bar. Used a clamp that together. Was able to put the compass in the groove of that and kind of almost get the pencil to make a little bit of a mark, and then I just kind of free-handed it with my Sharpie. I really, honestly, it doesn't really need to be perfect, but because I'm going to hand cut this, once I'm done I'll clean it up with a file and some sandpaper too, so I'm not getting too crazy here, but that's where I'm sitting. Now comes the interesting part, cutting this out and seeing how that goes. Just a brief update here. You can see I'm cutting it out with my coping saw. I found it easiest just to lay it down on the table here. It's a little difficult to get started. It's not easy to cut through. This is pretty solid ply stuff, sandwich ply, and it's slow going, but slow and steady is going to win this race, I think. I'm still going, like halfway through. I was just trying to hold it against the table and it wasn't working, so I got some clamps out, clamped at the table, and I've got a little better control here, so probably should have done that in the first place, but you know, that's me. Just trying to get it done here. I got other things to do. Okay, and we're through. You can see that the it's a little rough. That's what sandpaper's for. I'm gonna clean it up with a file first, and then a little sandpaper. But otherwise, it'll just stay raw. I might put a little tung oil over it just to seal it up. But other than that, not too shabby. It was a little difficult to cut through, you know, but not too bad. I cleaned it up. It won't look too bad, I hope. Okay, I used a file to level things out a bit, and then a couple different grits of sandpaper. You can see it's not perfect. There's still some spots from where my saw blade hit. I don't really want to go any deeper into the... I mean, I could smooth that out if I guess I was anal retentive, but I'm not. This is going to do the job. It's going to make noise, and my pedal chain will stay out of the way of the hoop, and beater should strike the head squarely. So I'm going to clean this up and wipe a little tung oil on that just to seal that up. Okay, cleaned it up, wiped a little tung oil in it. Looks pretty good for a hand cut with a coping saw. I'm sure if you got power tools you could probably set up some kind of jig, do something, but this just goes to show you this can be done with hand tools. It's funny, I went to look for my files to do this and I found my coping saw. I just bought another one at the hardware store over here. My old one is quite old though, so I got two of them now, but oh well, support the local hardware store. Okay, it's all mounted up, and let me grab a pedal and we'll set this thing up and see what it looks like. Alright, she's all mounted up, got the pedal mounted. I'm going to adjust the legs a little bit, but see, the chain is clearing, beater is just slightly above center. I got that really loose. Throw a microphone in there and we'd be jamming. Okay, it's all done, and was a pretty easy project. It took about one cigar. So I'm ready to start playing this little guy. Maybe I'll bring it out and gig it next weekend.